The top cop who put his badge on the line for justice.
The gripping story of Deputy Sheriff Doug Poppa. He was a top cop who did the right thing and paid dearly for it.
You know the name Doug Poppa?
Yes, I do. God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
He was a man of integrity. His testimony last summer freed an innocent man from jail who had already been convicted of shooting his ex-wife. But Poppa's going public cost him his job as an undercover cop.
I was elated, of course, but then as he testified, I was somewhat concerned for him, because I knew that they were probably going to crucify that man.
Doug Poppa was targeted for a 10-day suspension by his own department for defying superiors and talking to the media. This Brooklyn-born street fighter wouldn't back down.
Sometimes the truth has a price. That may be the lesson of a Virginia police officer who says, in trying to do the right thing, he ended up paying for it.
The message you're sending is, see, we did it, Doug. You don't come out, you don't buck the system. No matter what the reason is, you just can basically keep your mouth shut. But if I wouldn't do it all over again, I would take the badge and I would leave it on somebody's desk and get out of police work. Because the day I can't tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, and the day the system doesn't want me to tell the truth because somebody's pressuring me, is the day I leave the badge on the desk and walk away.
Poppa was fired for insubordination. One man who confronted truth and consequences.
Welcome, folks, to the Doug Poppa Podcast, episode 136 of Monday, February 20th, 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, the topic for today's episode. The Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department said a SWAT officer fired one shot and killed a suspect on November 4th, 2022. In contradiction to what the police said, the Clark County Coroner's Office stated the suspect died of multiple gunshot wounds. So there lies the problem. The Las Vegas media has not reported on this contradiction of the facts. Again, this is another, you call this a expose. My police sources are telling me that this is a cover-up. One high-ranking police official said this was, quote, a bad shoot, which means the SWAT officer should not have fired his weapon at the suspect. That's what I'm being told. How the hell did all this happen? And what's going on, once again, inside the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. Going to break down a lot of stuff. I'm going to show you some videos and some photographs I made from the videos, and we'll get into this, and then I'll tell you what I did during my investigation of this. Right now, let's watch the first video.
Good evening. I'm Jason Johansson, the Homicide Lieutenant with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I'm here to provide the preliminary details of an officer-involved shooting that occurred this evening on November 4th, 2022. Earlier today at approximately 12:21 p.m., officers from Bolden Area Command responded to a report of a shooting inside a residence at the 200 block of Kipling Street. As officers arrived at the scene and made entry into the residence, they located a male who was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Immediately, medical was summoned to the scene and unfortunately pronounced that male deceased. Through the investigation, we were able to identify who the suspect was, but we also learned that he had taken a hostage. We later learned that the hostage and the suspect were located in the 6200 block area of West Spring Mountain Road. Due to the rapidly evolving situation, SWAT was requested and responded to the scene. They were able to take the victim hostage into custody unharmed, thankfully. Unfortunately, as the suspect was being taken into custody, SWAT officer fired his weapon, and the suspect was later pronounced deceased on scene. Our officer is unharmed. Those are the preliminary details as we know them right now. The sheriff or his designee will provide a briefing within 72 hours. Thank you.
Okay, folks. On November 6th, I'll get this up on the screen for you. On November 6th, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department released this press release for immediate release, dated November 6, 2022. The officer involved in the November 4th, 2022 officer-involved shooting, which occurred in the 6200 block of Spring Mountain Road, has been identified as Officer Dwayne Ferrin, Ferrin. Officer Ferrin is 49 years old and has been employed with the LVMPD since 2009. Officer Farron is assigned to the Homeland Security Division, Special Weapons Tactics and Tactics Bureau, SWAT. The officer has been placed on routine paid administrative leave pending the outcome of a review of this incident. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to play the press briefing from the LVMPD that occurred on November 8th, and then we'll get into this. We'll break this thing down and find out just what the hell's going on with this. Apparent, from what I'm being told by police sources, is this is another LVMPD cover-up. But let's hold that thought for a second and listen to this video here.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Assistant Sheriff Andrew Walsh, and I'm here to brief you on the additional details as we know them today about an officer-involved shooting that occurred on Friday, November 4th, 2022. This is officer-involved shooting number 12 for 2022 and the 7th fatal officer-involved shooting we've had so far this year. At the same time last year, there were 8 officer-involved shootings. 5 of those were fatal. This event was initiated as a stakeout event on November 4th, 2022 at 6:17 p.m. The officer-involved shooting occurred in the 6200 block of Spring Mountain Road in Las Vegas, which is located in the Spring Valley Area Command, and you can see that area depicted on the screen in the map on my left. The involved officer in this officer-involved shooting is Officer Dwayne Farron. Officer Farron is 49 years old, and he's been with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department since 2000. In this incident, Officer Farron was armed with a Colt M4 5.56 rifle, and the investigation revealed that Officer Farron fired 1 round during this incident. Officer Farron is assigned to the Homeland Security Division and the Special Weapons and Tactics Bureau. The suspect in this event was identified as Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez. Hernandez was a 49-year-old Hispanic male adult. He was approximately 5'5" and weighed approximately 190 pounds. And you can see Hernandez's picture on the screen to my left. And the investigation revealed that Hernandez was armed with 2 firearms during this incident. One was a Smith & Wesson .380 and a Taurus G3 9mm. And both of those weapons were recovered from his vehicle during this incident. And you can see the pictures of the weapons on the screen to my left. Homicide detectives learned that Cabrera Hernandez had fired 6 shots from the 9mm handgun during a homicide event that occurred earlier in the day in the 200 block of Kipling Street. Had he survived, Hernandez would have been charged with murder, kidnapping, and 2 counts of own or possess a gun by a prohibited person. Now I'll go into the details of the officer-involved shooting. On November 4th, 2022, at approximately 12:21 p.m., LVMPD dispatch received a 911 call from a woman who reported a shooting at a residence in the 200 block of Kipling Street. Responding officers located an unresponsive adult male who was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. The victim was pronounced deceased at the scene by medical personnel. Responding detectives quickly determined that the victim had been shot by his girlfriend's ex-husband, Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez. Detectives also learned that Cabrera Hernandez had taken the ex-wife's adult brother hostage during this incident. Through the investigation, detectives located Cabrera Hernandez's vehicle, a white Nissan Armada, in an alley located in the 100 block of Bruce Street in downtown Las Vegas. Due to the fact that detectives believe Cabrera Hernandez was armed and still holding a hostage, SWAT was requested to assist. Shortly after detectives confirmed Cabrera Hernandez and the hostage were inside of the vehicle began to drive away, and at one point, we learned that the hostage was zip-tied while inside the vehicle. Detectives and the air unit covertly surveilled and followed the vehicle as Cabrera Hernandez drove throughout the valley for approximately 1 hour. While he was driving with the hostage in his vehicle, Cabrera Hernandez called his ex-wife approximately 4 times, and he admitted to killing her new boyfriend because he was getting in the way of them repairing their relationship and getting back together. Cabrera Hernandez also told his ex-wife that he would trade her brother in exchange for his passport and for her so that they could go to Mexico together and repair their relationship. At approximately 8:46 p.m., Cabrera Hernandez drove into the parking lot of a business complex located in the 6200 block of Spring Mountain Road. After being parked in that parking lot for a short amount of time, Cabrera Hernandez and the hostage exited the vehicle and began to walk away. As SWAT units were arriving in the area, Cabrera Hernandez made the hostage get back into the vehicle. Once they were back inside the vehicle, Cabrera Hernandez started to drive away. However, through the use of multiple vehicles, SWAT was able to stop the vehicle in the parking lot and block it in. SWAT officers exited their vehicle and quickly approached to rescue the hostage from the suspect's vehicle. As officers were attempting to rescue the hostage from the vehicle, Officer Ferrin fired one round from his rifle at Cabrera Hernandez, who was in the driver's seat. The hostage was rescued from the vehicle unharmed, and Cabrera Hernandez was removed from the vehicle to be treated by a tactical doctor and a medic who are embedded with our SWAT team. Despite the attempts of their life-saving measures, Cabrera Hernandez was pronounced deceased at the scene. The hostage later told us that night, and he told SWAT officers that they saved his life and that he was in fear that Cabrera Hernandez was going to kill him. And as part of the initial investigation, we recovered a manifesto from the vehicle, which was written by Cabrera Hernandez, and you can see it on the screen to my left with the skull and the crossbones. That was basically written in Spanish, but when we interpret it, he was threatening to kill other officials in town that had things to do with his previous criminal history. So now we're going to play some body-worn camera footage, but before we do that, in this photo you can see there's several bags of zip ties in the back of the vehicle, which we believe at this point were going to be used to carry out the threats that were listed in the manifesto. And now we'll play some body-worn camera footage. The first video you're going to see, this is Cabrera Hernandez's vehicle that looks like it's pulling out of the parking space, and the larger vehicles you see are our SWAT vehicles as they entered the parking lot.
Okay, vehicles backing out, SWAT vehicles are moving in. He's taking off. Okay, SWAT's going out of the vehicle.
And this is body camera footage from the ground level from one of the SWAT officers on the scene.
Unlock it. Unlock it.
So the first explosion you hear, that's actually a distract that SWAT used attempting to draw the suspect's attention away from the officers in front of the vehicle, and then simultaneously you hear the shot being fired. And that concludes this briefing, and I'll take some questions.
That's a harrowing scene for officers. 8 hours after a homicide, they're chasing around a suspect who has someone zip-tied in a car. Can you talk to kind of the efforts of Metro? It sounds like it was a valley-wide chase.
Yeah, it's a great question, Sabrina. So it goes on. It starts at around noonish, like we said, and you know that you have a murder. You know the person that you're looking for is capable of taking a human life, which obviously ups the ante for us from the start. Then he has a hostage that we know he's zip-tied from the scene and driving around with him. So, when they had the opportunity in this parking lot, the car is pretty much by itself. There's nobody else there. It's a closed business complex. It's a very harrowing scene. It's a harrowing decision to make an attempt to try to rescue the hostage and get him out of the car peacefully. So that's what the goal was there, obviously. But, obviously it turned out differently because of the actions of the suspect in this case.
Was there any indication that the suspect wanted to kill the hostage or just...
Yeah, from what we got from the hostage himself, he believed he was going to be killed. All right, that concludes this briefing.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw was a bullshit press briefing. Reporters sitting there, they didn't ask any of the questions that I'm going to be talking about here in a few minutes. 8-minute press briefing for a SWAT officer who killed a suspect. Granted, the suspect was a piece of crap, a maggot, who we used to call when I was on the job, but that's neither here nor there at this point. I'm going to bring out a lot of stuff and why those reporters sat at that press briefing and didn't ask, that's Under Sheriff Andrew Walsh, he's the current undersheriff, appointed undersheriff by Kevin McMahill, the sheriff now in Clark County who runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and that's the one I've been doing multiple podcasts on last year. He's a documented pervert, McMahill, and liar per a 1995 Internal Affairs Bureau investigation, and that man should resign from office because he's a disgrace to the police department. He is a documented pervert and a documented liar, Sheriff Kevin McMahill. That's for another podcast. I got more stuff coming out on him. Now, what you just saw, ladies and gentlemen, is I can't go to these press briefings. They don't allow me to go. They won't give me press credentials. They only allow what journalists they want to go to these press briefings because they know that if I was sitting there and a lot of these other press briefings, especially the cover-ups that they had, one cover-up after another, that I've been asking the hard questions that these reporters, for some damn reason, don't ask. Either they don't have any knowledge of police tactics or they're just afraid to ask questions. I don't know. But that press briefing was a freaking joke. Now, after that press briefing, the police department put out a written, up on the screen here, got it zoomed up, and they put out that, and it basically says the same thing, ladies and gentlemen. You notice I highlighted again, it says Assistant Sheriff Andrew Walsh discusses November 4, 2022, OIS. OIS stands for Officer Involved Shootings, if you're not familiar with the term. I'm not going to read it because it basically says what he said in the press briefing, which was basically nothing. And then you notice I underline where he said, again, Officer Dwayne Ferrin fired one round from his rifle at Cabrera Hernandez in the driver's seat. And the hostage was rescued. Okay? Now, that's true. The hostage was rescued. That was a good job. But we're going to get into some stuff here because there's something real screwy going on here, including to what my police sources. I think I said that at the beginning of the podcast. They're saying they're calling it a bad shoot. And then we have the other side of the coin here. If Officer Ferrin fired one round, why is the coroner saying he died from multiple gunshot wounds? And I'm going to get into that further. So right now, I want to play an excerpt again of what you just saw. Under Sheriff Walsh state. It's just a 30-second, and there's a reason why I'm emphasizing this.
Hit him. Unlock it.
So the first explosion you hear, that's actually a distract that SWAT used attempting to draw the suspect's attention away from the officers in front of the vehicle, and then simultaneously you hear the shot being fired.
Okay. You noticed, and I'm going to break it down, how fast they closed out that press conference, 8 minutes, and you couldn't really hear the single shot. They're saying he fired a single shot. It was the flashbang that they set off to the rear of the vehicle, obviously as a distract, and we're going to get into that in a second. What I did, ladies and gentlemen, I made some, for clarification purpose, because what I'm going to be talking about here, I made some photos from the video that they showed, and I'm going to play that now. And you see that I have some officers numbered in red, and those are my markings that you'll see here on the screen. Okay? This is just going to loop through. And you notice number 7 is the person, I believe, is Officer Ferrin, going up to the windshield, standing directly in front of the car. Luckily, I don't know if that engine was running, but if the guy would have stepped on the gas, he would have been in serious trouble. Officer number 6, you see in those photos, is another SWAT officer that before Ferrin approaches the vehicle, you could see number 6 is directly adjacent to the driver's side, almost looking in the windshield. He has a direct view of what's going on with the suspect in that car. And then you see, I numbered the officers coming out of the SWAT truck, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And the reason why I did that is number 1 is the only one of those SWAT officers who's carrying a rifle. And the only other person I see carrying a rifle approaching that vehicle is Officer Ferrin. The officer that's up on the driver's side door there, number 6, he has a handgun. 2, 3, 4, and 5 all have handguns. 2 of those SWAT officers have the bullet shield, so they have handguns. What's important to note, and I'll play the video again when I show this excerpt, but the SWAT officer number 1, I'm calling number 1, he has the rifle. When he approaches the vehicle, you'll see in the video, he puts his rifle down to the ground. The barrels, he points it down to the ground, which leads me to believe he didn't perceive a threat. And neither did these other officers, because none of them fired a weapon. Remember, Andrew Walsh said the only one that fired a weapon was Officer Ferrin. And we have a problem here, ladies and gentlemen, because if Officer Ferrin fired one shot and the coroner's office is not wrong, and I don't believe they are, and I'll tell you why here in a few minutes, then we have a problem here. Because if Hernandez, the suspect, granted he was a dirtbag, okay, a bad guy. He was also a convicted felon before he did these alleged crimes that they're talking about. But if Ferrin fired one round, how did Hernandez die from multiple gunshot wounds? And when the coroner says somebody died from multiple gunshot wounds, that means there's multiple entrance wounds in the body. And that's what they count as multiple gunshot wounds. So you got it numbered over there. Just kind of keep in mind, because I'm going to play a video from the press conference, and I just broke these videos down, and it'll be more clear on what I'm getting here. So we have the officers around the vehicle. Nobody fired a weapon. Andrew Walsh said that, except Officer Ferrin fired one round, and like I said, he ran up. Now, my sources that talking to me said Officer Ferrin was out of position. That's what I was told, and I believe what they're talking about was that he shouldn't have ran up to the front of that vehicle. And if the vehicle was running and nobody asked, none of the reporters in that briefing said, Under Sheriff Walsh, was that vehicle still running? Because if the guy would have stepped on the gas, he would have slammed Officer Ferrin into the back of that SWAT vehicle on the other side. And there's some more things I'm going to bring out later. So let me just load this up again for you. It's just looping around. Okay, and you see 6, SWAT Officer 6 has a handgun, distinctive, and he's right up to the driver's side door. His body cam video that they did not show would show the best view of whether the suspect's hands were up in the air when Officer Ferrin fired his weapon, or why Officer Ferrin fired. Now, my sources are telling me, ladies and gentlemen, and this was not brought out at the press conference, my police sources are telling me that Officer Ferrin's body cam video was not operating at the time he fired his weapon. And Under Sheriff Walsh did not bring that out. And with these, and I'll talk about more stuff that these reports, if I was sitting at the press briefing, I have a whole bunch of questions here that I would have asked, and I'll explain that. So remember, you saw number 7 was Ferrin. 6 is the officer right up to the door, the driver's side door. And he didn't fire his weapon. So, and I'm not saying, I'm told it was a bad shoot. And I get to that in a second, why they're telling me that. So now we're going to play this video here. It'll loop. This is from the air unit, okay? And it's, let me get it going here. Okay, what we're looking at here, and it's going to loop, so I'll just put it in a second. But that's the helicopter, the Metro Air Unit, and it's FLIR. That's why it looks like that. FLIR stands for, and we had that on the police department when I was back, that came out, forward-looking infrared camera. And it picks up heat sources. And you could see the dark spots on FLIR is cold, the gray is like warm, and anything white is would be heat source. So let me play that again for you. I don't know why it's not looping here. Let me get that up. Hang on a second. Let me loop that here. So I want that thing to keep looping. Okay.
Okay, vehicle's backing out. SWAT vehicles moving in. He's taking off.
Now, there's another question I'll have. They rammed that car so hard, there's extensive damage on the driver's, and then the passenger side, you see all the doors are smashed in. Those are the guys running up to the car. I don't have this video number because I can't number the video, but it gives you an idea. but the officers, let's just watch it again.
Backing out.
Now,
SWAT vehicles are moving in.
nobody asked the question, why did they ram that hard, so hard you see pieces of the vehicle flying off the car? That was, and then the other side on the driver's side door with the other truck. Did anybody ask him at the press conference, did he have a gun on the hostage? Because the way they rammed that car, if he had a gun on the hostage, the gun could have went off. They could have killed the hostage. I don't know. I know the tactics are, even when I was on the police department, is you never let the hostage go away with the suspect go away with the hostage. But you see the extensive damage on that. Right? I don't even think those doors were probably open. Also on the driver's side. But they got the hostage out. But
vehicles backing out.
Keep that in mind.
Vehicles are moving in.
Okay, there we go. One more time, I'll show you. Okay, you can see pieces of the car flying off. Anybody in that car was rattled, as far as I'm concerned. They're jumping up to the car. Good approach as far as this, except for Farron coming around the front, standing right in front of the car. If the guy would have stepped on the gas if the car was still operating, he would have smashed him right into the pickup truck. This is my opinion from what I'm looking at.
He's taking off.
There we go again. Okay, so we got that. Gonna play this again. This next one, just for clarity here.
The involved officer in this officer-involved shooting is Officer Dwayne Farron. Officer Farron is 49 years old, and he's been with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department since 2000. In this incident, Officer Farron was armed with a Colt M4 5.56 rifle, and the investigation revealed that Officer Farron fired one round during this incident. As officers were attempting to rescue the hostage from the vehicle, Officer Farron fired one round from his rifle at Cabrera Hernandez, who was in the driver's seat.
Okay, again, you heard him say Officer Farron fired one round. Nobody else fired any rounds, so keep that in mind. So we got two problems with this so far, from what I'm told. The coroner is saying Hernandez died from multiple gunshot wounds. If that is true, where did those extra rounds go into his body? Who fired them? When did they go in there? And the other thing is my sources are telling me this is a cover-up because, I'll tell you exactly what they said here. If they said, number one, Farron was out of position. He shouldn't have ran up to the windshield. That's what they're telling me. And supposedly Farron had his finger on the trigger and had a negligent firing at the time the flashbang went off. And you see in the video they just did, you see where Under Sheriff Wall says you heard the flashbang and then simultaneously a gunshot. Well, you couldn't hear it on that video. I couldn't hear it anyway. I don't know if the people who were sitting in that press conference had a better audio on it, but I couldn't hear it. So I made my own video and I slowed things down. And I'll play that here in a second. Like I said, my sources are telling me this is a cover-up. The department knows that this was a bad shooting, and they're counting on the fact that Hernandez was a bad guy and nobody will care. In other words, the guy's a POS. He killed a guy early in the afternoon. They did get the hostage out as safely, and the officer fired, allegedly, from what they're telling me, fired the weapon when he shouldn't have fired. Metro knows it's a bad shoot. And you got to understand something, folks, also. These just weren't regular Las Vegas Metro Police officers. This was the elite SWAT team. And over the years, Metro SWAT, they have killed bad guys, justifiably so, because I follow all that stuff. And they've arrested and take people out of houses without firing a shot. So if this is indeed, and my sources are telling me, this is a Metro cover-up, another cover-up, this time by current Sheriff McMahill, the pervert and liar, documented pervert and liar, okay? And you kind of see, even some of the cops told me that, you could even see how nervous Under Sheriff Walsh was at the press conference, because maybe he was afraid if some reporter would ask the right question, that I'm going to go through a list of questions they should have asked and the police should have done, and they didn't do it. So, that's what I'm being told. Like I said, the SWAT is the elite. So when a SWAT officer fires his weapon, now we had a negligent discharge during the Las Vegas massacre. Remember, I think it was SWAT officer Sean O'Donnell had his hand on his the selective fire, and he fired a 3-round burst. I believe it was a 9mm submachine gun, but nobody was hit. This guy was using a Colt M4, and I don't believe it was a selective fire weapon, one shot. and you'll hear the one shot here in a second, and that bothers me also because I don't know where these other shots came from if Hernandez was shot multiple times. But there's a lot of stuff they didn't show at the press conference, and I'm going to get into that in a second. So, like I said, when a SWAT officer makes a mistake with a weapon, especially if they kill somebody that shouldn't have been killed, even if the guy was a POS, if he had his hands up, we don't know that. And you understand something here. When they did the press conference, you notice Walsh didn't say why Ferrin fired. He didn't say he perceived a threat. The guy went for the gun. All he said is we found 2 guns in the car. So my sources are telling me this is a cover-up. So now, I said that enough. Now, I made this video. It's a, I want this thing to loop here. Hang on a second. It's not going to loop around this thing. Get the loop thing over here. Okay. This is a slow motion video that I made. It has audio on it. And it's just the part when the flashbang goes off in the back, because the video he showed at that press briefing, you can't hear the shot. And I believe on my video, you will, because I heard it, you will hear the flashbang, and then almost simultaneous, like you said, I hear one shot, okay, unless I'm missing something. So let me play that video right now for you. Okay, it's going to loop through again. You'll hear the flashbang go off in the rear of the car, and then you'll hear one shot. And that's from off. There's the shot. And that's from Officer Ferrin's rifle, I believe, who's standing in front of the car, looking into the windshield. Let's play it again. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hear one shot, just like Walsh said. So how did Hernandez end up dying of multiple gunshot wounds? Maybe there's an explanation. Then again, maybe not. Now, this is a photograph that I made from that. And I believe on this photo, because you can't see anything on the video they showed, even on this slow motion video, I believe this photo, you can see Hernandez behind the wheel. This is the best thing I could have done. I don't have a really expensive software, but I have software enough where I think you're going to see something here. Remember, this photo I'm showing right now up on the screen, this is before the flashbang went off, and it's the best one I can do. I did this about 100 times to get a good shot. And as you can see, I believe that's the suspect, Hernandez, behind the wheel. Okay? Now, I can't see if his hands are up or he has a weapon in his hand, but in order for this, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll leave it up for another minute, that's before the flashbang went off, okay? Now, indeed, that officer, let me pull it up again over here. The officer identified as number 6, okay? They didn't show his body cam footage on 6. They didn't show anybody's body cam footage that was around that car. What we're looking at here, and what you saw in that video, ladies and gentlemen, is body cam video footage from a police officer, SWAT officer, who's to the rear of Ferrin and the officer, I don't know his name, somebody mentioned it to me, but I forgot his name, the one that's right up to the driver's side. Now, why did they do that? Okay? I think that was done purposely because they didn't want the people to show, I believe, that the guy inside the car was no threat. Remember, there's 5 SWAT officers on the driver's side. None of them fired a weapon. The guy that has the bird's eye view is that officer right up there that was at the driver's side door before Ferrin came in. He has a handgun. He didn't fire his weapon. So what they're telling me, if indeed it's true what they're telling me, that Ferrin had a negligent or sympathetic firing when the flashbang went off, and that may be so because you saw the flashbang and then you heard the shot. And even though it was a bad guy, you have to understand this, okay? If the guy wasn't a threat, no matter how bad he is, you don't kill him. The police aren't executioners. At least most cops aren't, executioners. So we have a problem. Let me pull that up again here. My point being is this. And first of all, like I said before, Walsh didn't tell the press that Ferrin's body camera, one camera, was wasn't working at the time he fired the weapon. My source told me that. Okay, so that's something he omitted, and it was omitted purposely. The second thing is, none of those reporters, and I'm going to reiterate this here in about a couple of minutes, said, wait a minute, Sheriff Walsh, because this is never done before. When they do these shootings, ladies and gentlemen, these press briefings, they go frame by frame up until the time they show you the suspect with the weapon, and then they'll stop it because they, politically correct, they don't want to see the person get shot. But they don't do that in this instance. They don't show the body cam video of that officer that's up to the driver's side of that door who's looking right into the car. He has his gun on the suspect. He did not fire his weapon. Why? Because possibly the suspect's hands were up, or he didn't have a weapon in his hand. And then he shouldn't have been shot. No matter how bad this guy is, he killed a guy early in the afternoon, he took this guy hostage, that makes no difference. Okay? If the guy's not a threat, you don't fire your weapon. And I'm here, I'm told by my sources that this is a police cover-up because Officer Ferrin had a negligent, whatever you want to call it, sympathetic firing and shouldn't have fired the weapon. And it appears to me the way they did this press conference was to protect the department, and we'll get to that in a second. So one more time, okay? You can see him behind the wheel. Unfortunately, I did this 100 times, and I can't see whether his hands are up or there was a gun in the car. But the point to remember is, when Under Sheriff Walsh got press briefing, he didn't explain why Officer Ferrin fired. He just said he fired his weapon to get him out of the car. Well, what does that mean? Doesn't tell me nothing. Maybe the reporters are okay with that, but I'm not okay with that. Okay, so we got it. The next photograph that I made is a still photo of when the flashbang goes off, and I just made that just for my purposes. And you could see it went off in the back of the vehicle, obviously as a distract, and that's when Officer Ferrin fired the round. And as I'm told, he shouldn't have fired the weapon. The police department knows this is a bad shoot. Again, here's a more clear picture. There's Ferrin on the left. There's the unknown named SWAT officer who was there at the driver's side looking right in. Ladies and gentlemen, they're showing the body cam video of an officer to the rear of these two officers, okay? And why? Because I believe they don't want us to see Ferrin's body cam, like I said, wasn't operating. They don't want us to see the body cam video of this officer and the 5 officers on the other side. They don't want us to see that, because if it was indeed a bad shooting, like my sources are telling me, that would have shown something. And what's a disgrace about this, ladies and gentlemen, is the reporters that sat at that press conference and didn't pick this out, knowing they've been in these press conferences before when they do frame by frame coverage. Okay, and they didn't ask. And another thing, let's go back to the air unit video again. We'll play that here. Okay. Now,
okay, vehicles backing out. SWAT vehicles are moving in. There, he's taking off.
Boom. Okay. If he had a gun on the hostage, that could have went off. But then again, that's just my opinion. I'm not going to fault these guys. I mean, they're SWAT guys. I'm not. But it still bothered me how hard the whole smashed in the front and side, front and back, passenger sides. Also, you see parts went flying off the car, and then the other guy hits it from the driver's side. So who's ever in that car, as far as I'm concerned, I believe was rattled. Okay. Now look at all those officers around that car, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Where is the body cam footage of those officers? Specifically, that one was up on the driver's side. Why did they show one stinking body camera from a police officer who was in the rear, where you can't see the bird's eye view? It has been that officer that was right over there in the front of the car, looking in the windshield and the driver's side door. He had a handgun. He did not fire his weapon. So why did Officer Ferrin fire? Because they're telling me he had a negligent firing. It was a bad shoot. That's what they're telling me. A 100% bad shoot. And Metro knows it's a bad shoot. But they're hoping, because the guy was a POS and a convicted felon prior to this, from what I understand, that nobody's going to care. And that's not the point, ladies and gentlemen. This is another Las Vegas Metro Police cover-up, from what my sources are telling me. Now, okay, let me tell you what I did here.
SWAT's going out on the vehicle.
Okay. Now, this is going to get interesting, folks. 40 minutes. Okay. I'm not going to show it on the screen, but I'll hold it up for the camera. Okay. This is a request to the coroner's office that I sent out on December 12, 2002. Told them I was, a media request, and I said I'd like the investigator's report, the investigative report, in other words, the coroner's investigator, they go out to these scenes, and the medical examiner's report. I'm not interested in the toxicology report. So I wanted the investigative report and the medical examiner's report for Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez. And that was on the 12th. Well, on Wednesday, December 14th, ladies and gentlemen, I contacted the Clark County Coroner's Office, and I spoke with a lady named Candace. And I asked her, what was the cause of death on Mr. Hernandez? And she told me multiple gunshot wounds. And then I told her again, can you check to make sure, because Mr. Hernandez had killed a guy earlier that afternoon, and the guy's name was, last name was Blanco. I says, and he was shot multiple times by Hernandez. Can you make sure there's not a mistake? She says, well, they don't make mistakes, but she checked again. She came back and she said, Mr. Poppa, Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez, cause of death, multiple gunshot wounds. That was on December 14th. Again, she checked, came back, said again, and she confirmed multiple gunshot wounds. Okay? Now, a few weeks ago, February 9th this year, 2023, I once again called the Clark County Coroner's Office, and this time I spoke with a lady named Amanda. And again, without telling them I called up earlier in December, I said, told them I was, investigative journalist, can you tell me what the cause of death was for Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez? She came back on the phone. She said, Amanda replied to me, Mr. Hernandez, cause of death, multiple gunshot wounds. That's the second confirmation. One in December, one in February 9th, just a couple of weeks ago. And then I told her, can you double check? And I know they got upset when I say this because I'm not, making like that they don't know what they're talking about, and that wasn't my intention. I asked Amanda and told her that I said the police stated at a press conference in November that the officer who killed Mr. Hernandez fired one round from his rifle, striking Hernandez. Can you just check again to make sure you have the right person? And she got a little upset, but she did. And then she came back and she says, Mr. Poppa, Mr. Hernandez, cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds. Okay? Now, ladies and gentlemen, when a coroner says multiple gunshot wounds, they're talking about multiple entrance wounds into the body. Doesn't make a difference. The bullet came out of the back. That's not two. That's one shot. Multiple entrance wounds. Two confirmation, 2 times, December and February. So we have a problem here. And then I asked her, I said, I put in a request for what I just showed on the screen here in December, the coroner's investigator's report and the coroner's report itself. I said, when can I expect that? And this is verbatim what she told me. She stated, quote, we can't release anything until the court says so because an officer was involved in the death. So, ladies and gentlemen, we got a double problem here, okay? The police say Officer Ferrin fired one round, okay? The coroner is saying Mr. Hernandez died from multiple gunshot wounds. They both cannot be telling the truth, okay? You did hear on that video that I slowed down, I hear one shot. So what's going on here? Now, it's not only me, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put this up on the screen here. This is KLAS TV 8 News Now in Las Vegas. November 7th, they did a piece on television. They also published a print piece on their webpage. And watch this. Go up here so I could see what I'm talking about here. Okay, zoom up. Again, you see November 7th, this is KLS. Coroner identifies suspect fatally shot by police and homicide victim of suspect. The Clark County coroner identified the suspect shot to death by police as 49-year-old Jose Alexis Cabrera Hernandez. His cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds. The coroner also identified the man Hernandez was accused of killing as 48-year-old Llano Gonzalez Blanco, who also died from multiple gunshot wounds because Hernandez had shot him, killed him earlier in the day. So now we have them telling the same thing to Channel 8 that they told me in December, and they told me again just a few weeks ago on February 9th, Hernandez died from multiple gunshot wounds. Ladies and gentlemen, for the life of me, I can't figure out, and other news outlets also did this and said, the coroner said multiple gunshot wounds. I haven't seen anything on the local media that somebody said, wait a minute. The press conference, they said Ferrin fired one round. Coroner's saying multiple gunshot wounds in the body. How can that be? So you heard it here first. I don't know what the answer to this is, ladies and gentlemen, on this part, but I do know my police sources are telling me that this was a 110% bad shoot. Metro knows it, and they're hoping that the public isn't going to care if it ever gets out because the guy was a bad guy. So we rescued the hostage, and the guy was a piece of crap anyway, but that's not the way it works, ladies and gentlemen. The Las Vegas Metro Police Department, as I have exclusively reported for years on my podcast, that have engaged in multiple cover-ups. Sheriff Joe Lombardo, the corrupt sheriff who's now the governor of Nevada, and his under-sheriff Kevin McMahill. I did all those podcasts, ladies and gentlemen. The cover-up of the 12-year-old girl who got raped in 2019 because the sexual assault detectives didn't do their job correctly in 2018 when they should have arrested the suspect, and he was out. And then the following year, after he raped a girl in 2018, 11-year-old, this suspected piece of crap that's coming up for trial in a couple of months, by the way, allegedly raped another 12-year-old girl, kidnapped and raped her. Okay, they covered that up. I did that whole thing. And the press should have picked up on something. You go back and listen to those podcasts, and they didn't. Had they picked up on something, maybe they would have uncovered the cover-up that I uncovered, okay, 2 years later. And Lombardo, because my sources were telling me, was pissed off when I did that. And another thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not finished with this because I'm going to talk more about this in a second, but the other cover-up I exposed, the shooting in September of the 74-year-old woman out here in Las Vegas who was stabbed 68 times by her son, killed, as Metro police officers heard her screams outside her apartment door. They were stacked up. I did a podcast on this, about 3 podcasts back. It says police stand by as woman was being murdered, and they were stacked up getting ready to go in to save her life. They heard her screams, and the sergeant, Daniel Cordero, told them to stand down because freaking SWAT's on the way. Well, before SWAT came, the suspect came out, all full of blood, the knives in his hand, gave himself up. The cops that wanted to go in, according to my sources, went in and saw this woman's body. I guess she ended up being stabbed 6 to 8 times throughout the face and the whole body, dead. And some of those guys are having some serious emotional problems, thinking they should have just told the sergeant, F you, we're going in. That is another Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department cover-up. And I posted something on Twitter the other day because a lot of people give me information all the time, and I don't have the time to sit down and do these podcasts. They take time to produce and get it out. And I said, I was just told again the other day from my police sources that Sergeant Daniel Cordero is still on restricted duty at the Southeast Area Command. They admonished all the officers during the internal investigation. Got somebody that told me that's familiar with the investigation. All those officers admonished to keep their mouth shut. In other words, they got to keep the cover-up going, okay? And this thing happened in September, and they haven't fired this guy. They think if they fire him, it's going to just cause, more publicity. But the local Las Vegas media, ladies and gentlemen, have not reported on this. They haven't done a story on it. They all got my podcasts, as again, all my podcasts. So that is a freaking disgrace, but we'll talk about that again on another podcast. Now, let's get back to this. So now, Channel 8 in November put that out. Let's get back up on the screen. But why didn't any of these news people say, well, the coroner is telling us multiple gunshot wounds. Metro's saying officer only fired 1 round. There's something wrong here. Either the coroner is making a really big mistake or the police are covering something up about this. I don't have an answer on this one, folks. All I know is that my sources are telling me there was a reason why they did not want to show the body camera video of the officers that were in front of that vehicle that they should have shown. That's why it was purposely shown to the one in the back, not the guys that were up at that car. Now, I'll put this up on the screen here. Okay, and let me get up on my side here so I could see what I'm talking about here. Okay, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the LVMPD, they have a public page, and they put up all the use of deadly force by police officers and the reports of how their investigation came about. And as you can see on this one here, it says November 4, 2022, 6276 Spring Mountain Road, Las Vegas, Nevada. It's got the case number, the event number. It shows what they released. It shows the initial briefing, the initial media briefing. I showed those 2 videos. The press releases, I've showed those, everything. Now, you see on the bottom there that I underlined in red. The first thing it says, DA decision letter, pending. Okay, they didn't send any case to the DA yet. DA legal analysis, pending. The FIT report, that is the Force Investigation Team report that investigates the police officer's use of force, pending the completion of the criminal and administrative investigation. My sources tell me they're still saying the investigation's ongoing. This thing happened in November, okay? OIO review, ladies and gentlemen, is the Office of Internal Oversight Review, pending the completion of the criminal and administrative investigation. So those reports are not available. In other words, what those reports should show, if they didn't cover something up in these reports, and as we all know that I talked about in previous podcasts, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, some officers on that department have lied and omitted pertinent facts in police reports. They've given untruthful information to judges on search warrants. I covered this over the years in different stories. So we have to see. Now, some of my sources are telling me that it could be months, even months, it could be to the end of the year when these reports here will be released. Hoping by that time they think the public's going to forget about it. But I ain't forgetting about nothing, ladies and gentlemen, because this guy is dead. He's not going up for a court hearing. So they can't say we're holding back on the reports like they're doing with the shooting, the killing of the woman that got killed with the son that stabbed his mother 6 to 8 times. They're not releasing any of that stuff also, and that's not even on this page because the officers didn't use force. They just have that out. And when I asked for those reports, the officers' reports for the September fatality when the woman was stabbed 6 to 8 times and the officers were told to stand down, I asked for the officers' reports. I wanted body cam video. I wanted the dispatch because my sources are telling me the radio traffic would confirm that also. What they responded was, it's an open police investigation and it's our discretion and we're not releasing anything. And I was told they won't release anything until after the court hearing. And this son is charged with murder of his mother, which could be 5, 6, 10 years down the road. And by that time, they'll think everybody will forget about it. Okay? I'm not forgetting about it because that case is a freaking disgrace. That woman could possibly have been saved had the sergeant not given the standout order. That is a major cover-up. It should be national news all over this country. If it was any other city but Las Vegas, this would be all over the news. Again, the Las Vegas media have done nothing on that. Okay? So back over here again. Again, none of this stuff is released on this shooting because this was an officer-involved shooting, and the suspect's dead. He's not going to trial. So my question is, Las Vegas news media, you have the money and you have the attorneys that I don't have. Why don't you call up the Public Information Office and tell them you want to see all the body cam video footage in their possession of all the officers on scene, just like I showed in this podcast, okay? Hey, you're the media, you know? Stop protecting the police department, do your damn jobs, and find out what happened in this case, see what they tell you, find out what happened and why they're covering up that poor 74-year-old woman that died as cops were standing out the door who wanted to go in. I gave those guys credits. They were ready to go in and were told to stand down, wait for SWAT, okay? and she was murdered, and they didn't go in. Okay, this is it freaking pisses me off, people. Okay, because like I said, the Las Vegas Metro Police Department. I put this on Twitter the other day. I said, and I finally come to the realization, what people have been saying for years, that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, for decades, is one of the most corrupt police departments in the country, leadership-wise, okay? They've covered stuff up. They covered up their own crimes, domestic violence, with the brass, drunk driving, cover stuff up because they don't want to make it look bad on the police department. I broke a lot of these stories on my podcast the past 2 or 3 years. Not one of those stories was ever followed up by any of the Las Vegas media. So what does that tell you? Okay, enough of my rant here. Now, if I was sitting at that press briefing, ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up to 55 minutes. There's a couple more minutes, and I'm going to shut this thing down. If I was sitting in that press briefing, which they're never going to allow me to go into a press briefing, and I asked a couple of years ago, no, you have to be this, have to be that. Hey, I'm an independent investigative journalist. I should be allowed to go into a press conference for a police department that's being paid by taxpayer money. So if there's any attorneys out here in Las Vegas that got some balls that want to do this pro bono and get me into those press conferences, because it's a violation of the First Amendment as far as I'm concerned. I'm a journalist, and I have a right to be notified when those press conferences occur, and I have a right to be in there. So anyway, we'll talk about that on another podcast. Okay, now, if I was sitting at that press briefing, what I call bullshit press briefing, okay? And again, like I said, I was told by my sources that Officer Ferrin's body-worn camera was not operating at the time he shot Hernandez. Red flag goes up on that. Why? Why wasn't that explained and brought out by Walsh, the undersheriff, at that thing? But he didn't do it, okay? I don't expect the reporters to know that at the time because this is my police sources tell me. But why didn't he say, by the way, because then the next question would have been, a report any common sense. Okay, so his is out. What about the rest of the body cam video, under Sheriff Walsh? Why did you shut it down? Why was the air unit video, the FLIR video, shut down so quickly? We didn't see you guys take the suspect out of the car. You said you gave him medical attention. We didn't see the hostage coming out of the vehicle. They've never done that before, I mean, what the hell's going on here, ladies and gentlemen? So that one, okay? Didn't disclose it to the press that his body video wasn't working. And why is that? Good question, press. If you got some nerve, why don't you go up and ask the undersheriff tomorrow? Okay, this is what I would ask. Why did they only show the body? And I read this before, and I was going down the list here, and I got more, but I just do 2 pages of stuff here. Why did they only show the body-worn camera video of an officer who was to the rear of Officer Ferrin and the other SWAT officer who was directly in front of the driver's side door, excuse me, when Ferrin fired his weapon? Why did we only see that little video at the press briefing of a guy who was in the rear? They didn't show anybody else's. I said that. I would have brought that up at the press briefing. That is something the reporters should have said, wait a minute, what's going on here? We didn't see nothing. Where's the rest of the body cam video? Where's the guy coming out of the car? Where's the hostage being taken out of the car? And remember, that vehicle had extensive damage, okay? Another question I would have asked. Why wasn't that officer's body cam video shown at the press briefing? He was looking right into the vehicle. I'm talking about the SWAT officer who's right up to the driver's side of that door before Ferrin walks up to the vehicle, runs up to the vehicle, and stands in front of the vehicle. That's what I would have asked, okay? Reporters didn't ask any of this stuff. What about the body cam footage from all the other SWAT officers on scene who were surrounding the suspect's vehicle? And you got to remember, the number one guy, and I don't know if I'll play that video again here. You're not going to be able to see it, but I'm going to play it again over here for you. Air unit video. Okay, you're not going to be able to see it because I slowed it down. Okay, hold on a second. It's not going to be that. Okay, go over here, 16. Okay. Remember, on the photographs, let me put the photographs up on maybe that's just a better way of doing it here. Video photo. Okay. 15. Get that back over here. Okay. Get that in there. Okay. Now, on the video, you can't see it on the video that I showed. I had to slow it down last night, like really slow. But officer identified as number one. He has a rifle. All the other people have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 outside of one all have handguns. Number 6 at the driver's side door, he's got a handgun. Ferrin's got a rifle, and this guy was number 1. But what's interesting, folks, when I watched the video on there, and if you want to go back and slow it down, or the video I showed here, you'll be able to see it. The minute that officer number 1 gets to the passenger side of that vehicle, he points the rifle down to the ground. And it's like moving his hands, like there's no threat. He doesn't perceive a threat. And obviously none of those officers fired a weapon, so I just want to bring that out. You can go back and play back all the video I have and slow it down, but you'll see it. The minute he goes up the car, he puts the barrel down away from the vehicle to the ground. Obviously he didn't perceive a threat. Okay. Why didn't they show video footage from the officers' body-worn cameras and the air unit's forward-looking infrared camera of the officers removing Hernandez and the hostage from the vehicle? I already said that, but that's over here. And they showed none of that, okay? It was a BS press briefing for an officer-involved shooting, as far as I'm concerned. I didn't hear any reporter ask, and I don't know to this day, if the hostage was in the front seat or the back seat of the vehicle, okay? That's something that I would have asked, or something I would want to know. Under Sheriff Walsh, never explained why Ferrin had to shoot the suspect. He never said. All he said was he shot him as they were getting the hostage out of the car. He didn't say he had a gun in his hand. He picked up a gun. He was pointing it at. All he said is we found 2 guns in the car, 2 handguns in the car. But he very careful in what he did this press briefing. He didn't say he shot him because he had a gun in his hand or he was going for a gun. Because my next question would have been, well, how come the other guy didn't shoot? Maybe he didn't perceive the threat, possibility. But these are the questions reporters should have asked, and they don't. And they did not ask at that press briefing. Okay. Why didn't any other officer fire his weapon if there was a threat? Okay. Why was the suspect's vehicle rammed so hard? Could that have endangered the hostage if the suspect had a gun pointed at him? You saw how fast they hit that car. They weren't just blocking him in. They rammed it, and the whole side of that passenger side doors are smashed in, so is the driver's side. And if this perp had a gun at the hostage, when they hit that car, could have that made him hit, even accidentally, the gun go off and hit the hostage? I don't know. I'm just bringing that up. Okay. And this is a big one here. Okay. Why wasn't a frame-by-frame video showed at the press conference? They do this all the time on officer-involved shootings. They show the person with the gun coming out, they show them with the knife, they show the officer shooting, and then they freeze it at the time the guy gets hit because politically correct. Of course, we're too childish that we can't see somebody get shot, even though you see it on the movies all the time. But they didn't do it in this thing. This was a bad press conference, ladies and gentlemen. It was purposely staged, I believe, my opinion, based on what my sources told me, because this is a police cover-up, okay? And then I said, if Ferrin fired one shot and no other officer fired his weapon, how come the coroner says Hernandez died of multiple gunshot wounds? That's the other aspect of this, okay? That's separate and apart from Officer Ferrin having a bad shoot, and that was said by a high-ranking LVMPD official, okay? And then I put over here, why did Officer Ferrin position himself, run directly in front of the vehicle? Was that a dangerous move if the suspect had stopped on the gas, if the car was still running? Anyway, these are questions I would have asked at the press conference, but obviously our local Las Vegas media did not ask those questions. My next video, ladies and gentlemen, we're an hour and 3 minutes here. For some reason, my voice is going again. My next video also discusses Walsh, Under Sheriff Walsh, and that'll be in my next video. Hopefully that'll be out tomorrow or Wednesday. And so that's what we got, ladies and gentlemen, right now. We have no police reports. The internal investigation is still ongoing. We have a two-prong case here. We have, why did the coroner say he died from multiple gunshots? Told me twice, December, February, told the Las Vegas media, as you saw on the screen, and the police saying he fired one shot. I mean, did they fire more shots after they got him out of the car? Another accidental shoot? I don't know, okay? But that is a major problem here. That needs to be explained. And then we have, of course, the bad shoot, according to what my sources are telling me, that he shouldn't have fired his weapon. It was a negligent discharge, possibly, when the flashbang went off. I heard he had his finger on the trigger. So that's what we got, ladies and gentlemen. I present this to you because the Las Vegas media do not present these facts to you. So you all know I'm an independent investigative journalist. You saw the thing, the banner going across the bottom of the screen over there. You support my independent journalism if you can at paypal.me/Doug Poppa. Contact information if you have tips and stuff. Don't give me any BS. I don't have the time for it. Doug Poppa Podcast at gmail.com. Follow me on Twitter because I put a lot of stuff out on Twitter the past couple of days. Sometimes people give me information like I didn't see this story come out either. I received information at the end of last week. Chief Deputy District Attorney, I think her name was Leah Beverly. She was terminated from my sources because one, she was involved in a drunk driving incident where she lied about it, and there was video. She was out drinking with 8th Judicial District Court Judge Michelle Levitt, according to my sources, and some of her colleagues. They told her not to get behind the wheel, and so they had an internal investigation going on. And then I found more information the other day, and none of this has been reported by the Las Vegas media as of yet, is that during the internal investigation, they found out, allegedly from what I'm being told, is that Leah Beverly, Chief Deputy District Attorney, was running she has a legal consultation business on the side, and she was conducting that business while she's supposed to be working on cases for the Clark County District Attorney's Office, and she was even billing people in her private business for time she was on. In other words, she was double dipping on county time. I didn't see that hit the papers yet. And the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, is, and I said this over the years, there's only one person in Las Vegas consistently for years that has the inside information that goes on in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and sometimes in the Clark County District Attorney's Office. I have these sources. I had them for years. They give me this information, and I put it out because that's what you do as a journalist, okay? And the police department, 9 times out of 10, it's no comment. The Clark County District Attorneys, a lot of times, at least with me, you don't hear anything back. So when my sources tell me this information, I put it out there. Sheriff Joe Lombardo at the time, the corrupt sheriff who's now the governor of Nevada, and his undersheriff at the time, Kevin McMahill, documented liar and pervert, who's now the sheriff of Clark County, running the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. For years, I've been calling these people out. I've been breaking one story after another, both when I was writing for the Baltimore Post-Examiner and now on my podcast. Not once, not ever, has any member of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, the LVMPD, come out in a press conference, send a thing out and says Doug Poppa's podcast and what he uncovers is BS. There's no cover-up. There's nothing. They can't say that, ladies and gentlemen, because my sources are active duty and retired police officers, and I have active duty, high-ranking members of the police department that still give me information, and they do it for one reason, not to disgrace the police department, because they can't stand the leadership then and now of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And that's to you, Sheriff Kevin Pervert McMahill. You need to resign from office because you are a disgrace. You are a disgrace. You are a documented pervert and liar, a sexual deviant per a 1995 LVMPD IAB investigation. I did multiple podcasts on that, and some of the news picked up stuff, and Channel 8 did a pretty good thing on it too with the victim and stuff. Why isn't that national news? I don't know. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 21:28 hours, it looks like. Is that what time it is? Yeah, 21:28. It's Monday, February 20th. Thanks for listening. Remember, audio podcast versions are available for free on iHeartRadio and Spotify. If you don't subscribe to the YouTube channel of the Doug Poppa Podcast, it's free. Hit the red subscribe button and the bell so you'll be notified when I put new podcasts out. And we'll see you on the next podcast. I got a lot more stuff coming out and more exposing more cover-ups within the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. You're only going to hear this here on the Doug Poppa Podcast from Las Vegas, Nevada. You all have a good night.
This lawman sacrificed his badge for justice.
Poppa knew a secret that could free a man wrongfully imprisoned for shooting his ex-wife. But when Poppa stepped forward, he was cut down by his own police department.
All this stuff's going in my head. Should I call up to the defense attorney? Okay? And I knew if I did that, holy hell would break loose.
Deputy Sheriff Doug Poppa used to be one of the top cops in rural Loudoun County, Virginia. Deputy Poppa feels he's been busted himself. He lost his job as a narcotics investigator, he says, when he told an ugly truth about a 4-year-old crime. The truth about how his own department and the local prosecutor allegedly ignored key evidence and may have sent an innocent man to jail.
I testified, and everything changes.
What Deputy Papa testified about was an attempted murder in 1987.
They deliberately withheld evidence that should have been given to my defense attorneys.
Bill Birch is the prosecutor Deputy Papa accused of ignoring the evidence.
He says, I told the prosecutor, I told Mr. Birch that this woman said, I'm going to shoot myself if need be, and I'm going to make it look like my husband did it just to ruin his life. Did he say that to you? No, he did not.
But this November, the court believed Doug Poppa.
Oh my goodness, is this the reception committee?
And on Valentine's Day, William Carter was released on a $50,000 bond and given a new trial.
This man usually puts people on trial in this courthouse, but in a rare turn of events, the Loudoun County Commonwealth Attorney was called to the witness stand. William Birch was asked to respond to allegations that he pressured a witness to lie in earlier court proceedings.
No, sir.
A woman who lived at the Carter mansion the night Carol Vanderbilt Carter was shot 5 years ago testified that the prosecutor coached her to withhold testimony about the gun involved.
I certainly did tell him about that it was a .38.
I don't recall her saying anything about the gun, the .38 caliber, anything like that.
He's lying to cover his tracks on the last trial.
The high price one cop is paying for telling the truth.
After serving more than 4 years behind bars, Carter was on the edge of his seat when the verdict was read today.
We, the jury, on Peaches joint, find the defendant William Douglas Carter not guilty.
After he audibly thanked the jury, Douglas Carter could not contain himself. The tears flowed.
I came out and testified in November of 1991 at the habeas corpus hearing, and again in January. I was suspended for 10 days without pay, and I ended up being fired after 12 years in this department.